Hello. So this is a panel on green NFTs, discussion on the intersection of art, NFTs, and their ecological impact. I am Daniel. I do protocol research and governance at Stakefish NF2 pool, POS validator, and POW mining pool. And these are your wonderful panelists, Joseph Pallant, Jason Bailey, and Tamlin Rudolph. So they have all, in some way or form, been involved with both the NFT side of things in the blockchain space for quite some time, as well as the green side of things as well, either more recently or from the beginning of when blockchain had started, actually, or a lot of this blockchain stuff had started. So I think it would be great if we can just go around and introduce yourselves. I think what would be good is like a quick bio, where you work, and then kind of like the work that you've done in the NFT slash blockchain space under the green umbrella. So maybe I think we're like, if I point this way, that's you, Joseph, right? Okay, so we can go around this way, clockwise.
Why don't you call on us?
Okay, so we'll go this way. Yep.
But you have to say who's that way.
Joseph.
All right. Thanks.
I think that it's this way.
It's
the Brady Bunch style.
Hi, everybody. So my name's Joseph Pallant, and am I causing an echo for you guys there? No, good.
That sounds fine.
So I'm based in Vancouver, British Columbia. I'm the founder and executive director of the Blockchain for Climate Foundation. We're putting carbon markets under the Paris Agreement on Ethereum with our blockchain internationally transferred mitigation outcome platform, the BitMo platform. I'm also the director of climate innovation at EcoTrust Canada, building economies that provide for life. And I've been working in the carbon market, developing environmental assets, primarily carbon offsets, for the last 16 years. And in tumbling down the blockchain rabbit hole in 2017, realized the magic that NFTs could bring to really solving a lot of coordination failures under the Paris Agreement and under global collaboration to reduce emissions and bring capital to the opportunities for emission reduction outcomes. So we're building an NFT-based platform. It's available in beta right now to allow national governments to issue and exchange their emission reduction outcomes as ERC 1155 NFTs. Thanks.
Awesome. Tamlin, would you like to go next?
Yeah, hi everyone, and thanks for having me on this panel, guys. I'm very honored to be on the panel with you all. My background is energy derivatives trading. So I traded the power markets for almost 15 years. And as everyone knows, the production of power is a very, unenvironmental at times and carbon intensive process, especially coal-fired power. And I was based in Australia, which had a very, very high, very cheap coal and a lot of coal-fired generation. And so I got interested very early on in the schemes and the ways that governments were looking to incentivize the creation and sustainability of renewable energy. So I traded the green certificates such as REX, the renewable energy certificates, and other certificates from other types of trading schemes. And I was actually in Australia trading at the height of the introduction of carbon pricing mechanism, which was sort of at that time a proposed cap and trade scheme. So there was a lot of discussion around that time around advantages and disadvantages of various schemes. I got very involved and interested in that. And I also worked for some time on a social enterprise that was attempting to essentially switch people to a greener supply of electricity. And doing that really taught me a lot about the trust barriers to adoption. Of course, no one wants to be greenwashed. I think there's a lot of goodwill and people want to, engage in voluntary carbon offsetting, but really the trust came out as a thing over and over again as a problem for people. in any case, after I finished trading electricity derivatives, I moved into the sort of innovation space. And in the last 3 years, I've helped design and build Vega protocol, which is a fully decentralized derivatives trading protocol. And that's, really about making markets far more accessible, far more, let's say, customizable to various use cases. And so I'm very interested in seeing how we can make decentralized derivatives markets that tie into carbon and green trading markets, so that we can essentially make use market forces to hopefully sort of guide investment and essentially ultimately make the world a bit of a greener, better place. So that's a brief bit on my background.
Awesome. And I guess we could talk a little bit more about like the whole incentivization of good behavior for, right, how carbon credits are involved and how NFTs are important there. But yeah, Jason, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and first, thanks for having me, Daniel. Excited to be on the panel. So my background real quick. I always start by telling people I was an artist raised in a family of engineers, which is sort of meaningful for where I am today. Both brothers and my dad were engineers. I went off to art school, graduated, and found pretty quickly that like not a lot of opportunity for artists, in the early 2000s. Went into the tech space, more on the marketing and design side for a while. Went back, got a master's degree in digital art. Really, that's my passion. For the last 5 or 6 years, been writing about the intersection of art and tech for a blog called Artnome.com. There, I wrote an article in late 2017 called the NFT art market is here, or actually the blockchain art market is here. NFT wasn't really a term we were using back then. We were kind of calling them dank rares or crypto art. So this was sort of like this overzealous proclamation that the market was here. Now it's kind of funny because back then there weren't a lot of us buying, selling, trading these NFTs. And now obviously in the last few months, it's sort of exploded, which is cool. It's great to see it growing. But as someone who was sort of part of the early community in this space and really saw a lot of potential in it, a couple of months ago when Memo Igden first, I think, brought our attention sort of as a community to the ecological concerns around NFTs. At first, I thought that was really productive because, it's a conversation that we need to have and get more information out there about it. But I saw it quickly kind of devolve into finger pointing, kind of becoming counterproductive, and there was some shaming going on, which was a bummer because people on both sides were people that I really valued and thought of as friends within the community. So we'll probably get into a little bit later, but I basically put out a tweet that said, hey, what if I threw some money and some time, donated some money and some time into sort of a green NFTs initiative that the community could all come together and kind of drive. Maybe we don't solve the whole problem, probably not, right? But we can start to take some ownership as a community and come together like we always have within the NFT space and see what kind of progress we can make. So I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit later. So in addition to Artnome and green NFTs, launching a not so stealth company called Club NFT. So that's what I do during the days these days.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good transition point into, right, maybe some of the points of clarification that maybe each of you guys can make about NFTs and its ecological impact, because I do know that there are very, let's say, extreme opposing sides that kind of come over from, let's say, like the Bitcoin energy debates as well, where right, some people are saying NFTs don't have an ecological impact or as pronounced of an ecological impact as people might think, because some of it's already using existing block space versus, even the small amount of impact that it does have, there is kind of like a onus on a lot of the builder community as well as those who care in the specific domains that we each kind of take in the blockchain umbrella can do something about. Hence kind of like the green NFT hackathon that Jason, you and Gitcoin and the Mint Fund had been organizing. But yeah, perhaps we could start from there. We can again just go around quickly, right? If there are like some points of clarification in your specific stance on how you see NFTs specifically on blockchains, if it does have as significant a climate impact as people say, or maybe it doesn't, or maybe there is some things that people are completely missing the point on. So yeah, maybe we can go in reverse order again. So if Jason, you could start from that.
Yeah, happy to. And I'm glad we're going in reverse order because I think I'm probably best suited to give a high level overview. I'm definitely not a climate expert by any measure. And that's why I tried to set up the bounty and the hackathon so that we could bring in people that are smarter than me to try to help solve it. But I have been doing a fair amount of interviews with folks that, want to know at a high level how people are looking at this. And my understanding of it is there's a good analogy that people use actually kind of from both sides that I think kind of quickly gets to it, which is people are saying, let's use Ethereum, for example, because a lot of the NFTs are on Ethereum. Ethereum's essentially a plane, right? And this plane is going to take off, let's say, New York, and it's going to land in Europe. And no matter how many people are on the seats of that plane's going to use the same amount of fuel, right? When it flies and takes off. And the people that are kind of defending, NFTs and saying it's really not that bad are saying like, look, why are we beating up these artists? There's like 100 people on the plane. 2 of them are artists, right? The plane's going to take off and land, whether or not they're on there. The plane's going to use the same amount of, energy. 4 artists, why are we beating them up? And then the people sort of on the other side of that analogy, as I understand it, are saying, well, look, if nobody gets on the plane, then the plane doesn't take off at all and it doesn't use any energy, right? And I think, my position within that is like, okay, smart people with much more complex analysis than the analogy that I just gave, coming from both sides, to artists who aren't always the most technical folks, but want to take advantage of the new NFT ecosystem. And it's really, really hard to navigate. Like, there's aggressive, emotional, smart people who I would respect arguing from both sides. And there's no clear resource if you're an artist where you can go and feel good about this anymore. So half this bounty that we're setting up is based on sort of purely educational, right? So gathering resources, making them available to artists so that they can understand what is the true impact, which platforms, if any, are better than others. What's the difference between POW and POS? Which blockchains have plans to try to move from one to the other, right? So really just educating artists, right, who are the primary folks that are out there trying to make these NFTs, so they can feel at least informed, if not better, about their decisions as they try to navigate the space. And then the other half of the hackathon or the grant is really people trying to develop solutions, so like open source code or different things that might be a little bit more on the programming side, to see if there are ways that we can kind of improve the efficiency from that side. So yeah, not an expert, but as I see these projects coming out from the teams, I myself am learning more, which is the goal for all of the artists in the community, is to get back to where we can at least feel like we understand the impact we have and how to, some options on how to offset that or how to do this intelligently, and excited to learn more from the other folks on this panel about it as well.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think that analogy is pretty great with the airplane. I had actually just wrote an article on why certain mining pools do choose to mine empty blocks, where you can have blocks that are not filled with transactions and still miners get rewards from the blocks themselves. But then you have like the additional transactions that you can aggregate and get those transaction fees that miners would preferably choose from the mempool. I think there's definitely a significance between what type of blockchain system you're using, if it's like a POW one or a POS based one. But yeah, I think that kind of leads into a pretty great transition into maybe some of the stuff that you've been doing, Joseph, particularly around, right, from a lot of these awareness bounties and the solutions bounties that we've, because I was helping also organize a green NFT hackathon, is that once people do submit these solutions and then they are kind of claiming that we can use these sorts of carbon credits, package them up with NFTs, and then have these tokenized carbon credits that exist on the blockchain represent offsets for whatever the NFT's carbon footprint is like, there's like layers to it, right? And then I think that's kind of what you were doing with the Bitmo platform, where there are definitely different types of carbon credits, different qualities, and there's a whole slew of a lot of terminology that I think I'm still also trying to wrap my head around. But yeah, I'd love to kind of get your input on that, because there is like this very high level, yes, tokenize it, package up NFTs with tokenized carbon credits. These kind of travel around with them if you burn them, and then represent offsets. Do they represent offsets one at a time? Do they kind of have like this perpetual offset? Do you offset like a certain amount that is going to last like a few hundred years, right? Very similar to like the debates between NFT storage with like IPFS versus Arweave, right? Arweave is like a pay once, and you have a 200-year storage, versus IPFS, which it requires pinning. But yeah, with regards to like the types of carbon credits, how those are going to be used to kind of prop up or also satisfy a lot of the climate stewards, which I think most of us are. How do you kind of see like Bitmo, and also like a lot of the carbon specific quality standards kind of going into that?
Yeah. You bring up a great issue around how do we, well, there's a few things. First, what is the footprint of our work? How do we understand that accurately? How do we go about reducing that and offsetting that? So when I got involved in this discussion sort of this year, as it's been heating up in February, March, thought it through, and I think that there were sort of two things and then three things. The first two are, if you're minting an NFT on Ethereum, for example, are you part of that carbon footprint? And I would say yes. There's an overarching footprint of the blockchain, and then you are using a portion of it. That's how we do it in normal carbon footprinting. So yes. That secondary question that was touched on earlier is there actually direct, incremental, additional emissions from me making an NFT? And the answer is no, not necessarily directly, of course, because that airplane analogy, how that normally goes is, if you fill it up with 100 people, then they send another airplane. But in this case, with Ethereum blocks, you can't add airplanes to the fleet. They're all flying max. So you aren't directly creating new emissions. You're just bumping a lower cost, a lower gas fee transaction. The indirect, however, dynamic here is that by making it more profitable to mine Ethereum, by increasing the transaction fees, that makes it profitable for more people to buy new GPUs, plug them in, use electricity, cause emissions. So those were sort of the two pieces. Then after that, we get into really basic sort of carbon footprinting, carbon assessment, which is quantify your impact, reduce it as much as possible, offset the rest. So carbon, is it climate.fyi? Gosh, I've forgotten already. Climate.fyi, carbon.fyi?
Carbon.fyi.
Carbon.fyi, sorry guys, is doing amazing work to allow you to look at the carbon emissions via gas usage of your Ethereum wallet. And so that's excellent. And then so you can know how much carbon you're proportionally responsible for. The next question is reduce as much as possible. So one can simply just not engage with NFTs and throw your hands up and sell your art to a gallery, or not. Or you can use a low carbon blockchain to engage with NFTs. Tezos and Hackathon, of course, is doing great work that's really rallied a lot of artists. It's been pretty profound to watch. Near Protocol, already a proof of stake blockchain, which has then gone and worked with really high quality carbon accounting group and et cetera at South Pole, and then offset the rest. So you can also use the platforms that they have developing. Also really like Nifty.inc on the XI chain that Austin Griffith and folks have been doing. It's really fun. You get to draw it yourself. And then the other way to reduce is, of course, use a layer 2, on Ethereum. And so we already see great stuff coming out on Matic/Polygon. Those things are hitting real time. We've got those NFTs coming out in crypto voxels right now, where your avatar can wear some cool glasses. Portrait pixels on Twitter, they're doing customized portraits and pixels. And today they launched in crypto voxels where you can actually get your voxel visage mask, where it's your face that you can wear on your avatar. So that's also really low carbon. The shift to proof of stake, of course, is the major piece for the whole Ethereum blockchain moving forward. It's really exciting. But I also note that I think that the Ethereum community really has an opportunity to lean in hard in advance of proof of stake to really capture this moment around climate. And maybe we'll have a bit more of a chance to talk about it, but I would really encourage the Ethereum community to get to zero through these processes and proof of stake. But then how can we use NFTs to actually do green things, do fundamental use cases, the whole warp and weft of what we're doing with NFTs to address climate change? So that does loop back around to your question, Daniel, and kind of the third piece of those three, which is offset the rest. So you could simply buy a normal offset off chain. You could buy something that's been tokenized as an ERC20 or as an NFT. The question of making sure that those tokens get retired or used up against the emissions is really important. So perpetual carbon neutrality, I don't think is really a thing if there's continuing to be emissions, unless you just offset 1,000 tons and called it a rounding error. But yeah, important stuff, and really exciting to see people leaning in on this and trying to tweak the NFT space and the green NFT space with what we've learned over a long time in the climate space is fun, important, and definitely an honor to get to play a part of.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that leads well, again, into like what kind of the stuff, the world that Tamlin comes from, especially on the, right, if we want to incentivize people to act in certain, I guess, virtuous ways, right, incentivize good behavior, so to speak, maybe there are going to be some people who want to, pay the extra dollar or pay the extra few dollars to say, I have an NFT that is clean or green because I was able to purchase an additional tokenized carbon credit on chain. Just like when you go to the grocery store and say like, hey, do you want to donate $1 to like St. Jude or something like that? I'd be curious, right, Tamlin, because if from your energy trading days, right, there are probably certain premiums and incentives that are made in order to have profitability, with the indirect kind of result being you are benefiting from, or you are benefiting the environment or the climate because you are using those carbon credits. But I know that we have talked about this briefly in the other blockchain infra carbon working group. But yeah, I'd be interested to get your point on, right, the incentive mechanisms for how you can encourage this good behavior of having carbon credits or carbon credit markets, and how that can be tied to NFTs, and if NFTs can they themselves be traded as those types of, in the same types of markets that you are familiar with or came from.
Yeah, definitely. It's something I'm thinking a lot about in the last, basically since joining your working group. And so, yeah, I've got a few things to sort of elaborate on. So you have, as probably many of you know from watching the news and seeing various agreements signed, that you have, regulation-driven obligations on companies and individuals, particularly if they're part of a certain industry or on the whole countries, to spend extra, which I think is what you're talking about, Daniel. It's like pay a bit more for your energy or for something to accumulate these credits, and these credits really track back to various projects or initiatives where something greener and better is happening, whether that's a renewable energy source or whether it's, carbon offsets through, various sort of land management schemes and so forth. And so that's, there's various regulation side of things for the demand side, but then of course there's also the voluntary market scheme, and we all know that if we've ever flown on an airplane, speaking of airplanes, you have the choice to offset your carbon. And I come back all the time in my mind with blockchains is that blockchains are very, very good for two things, really. I mean, they're good for lots of things, but two things really come to mind when it comes to financial markets. One is efficiency. And so what efficiency gives you is this ability to exchange value and actually risk profiles really quickly and really easily. And the second thing ties quite closely to this, which is transparency. And so when you combine efficiency and transparency, that can be really powerful for markets, because I think at the moment, a lot of markets are, even for green products especially, are really quite stagnated because, well, not stagnated, that's probably the wrong word, but they're slowed down, let's say, by the fact that, it can be like days of manual processes to register a certificate or, understand what your carbon footprint is. There's a lot of inefficiency and a lot of lack of transparency. And the problem with those things is it breeds distrust. And my sort of vision for the future, which I'm still developing and I'm still learning from many of you, but is that, one day we will have systems that are very, very live, as we connect with the Internet of Things and as we, increase our understanding of, what's actually happening in various projects, but also what actual carbon footprint is, but also humans and our behavioral makeup, let's say, that we can progress us all as a sort of human and environmental race towards something that is better for the environment. And so back to the problem about, do you fly the plane? I'm like, of course you fly the plane. What you do is you solve the fact that the plane is inefficient, is consuming carbon. And that's what I'm so excited about. It's what Jason's doing is, it's a very positive step forward. It's like, let's solve this. We're all really smart people in this industry. And I think someone put in the comments, it's easy to get into echo chambers on this stuff. And it really is. And I find it such a shame because there's a huge amount of power in experimentation and playing with all the tech. So back to NFTs in particular, I'm quite interested to see how, you can use NFTs to represent particular, carbon offset projects. There's different times that, like the different, times that an offset is created, and very specific things that make you particularly want an NFT, not a fungible token. So that, again, it leads to the transparency so people can really examine that and understand what they're buying and holding. And we can combine that with DeFi type mechanisms where, you could have a call on funds over time to sort of maintain a particular project. And if that's all happening transparently, but it's also easy for you to do, I feel like there will be more uptake. So that's sort of where my head goes with all of this stuff. I feel very, as I said, very mindful of learning about it all, but I feel like I can sense the power of the tech. And I feel like we should embrace it positively.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tamlin. I think we have a minute left. Maybe we can end this with each of us or each of you guys talking about maybe the ideal case, of maybe like what it looks like in 5 to 10 years, or let's say 5. Crypto time is much faster than real time, but yeah, like let's say like in the next 2 years, right? If there are these experiments and as you mentioned, like these powerful experiments that can be played by the right types of players, right? What is the ideal case for NFTs and their carbon impact on the world? So maybe we can just go the same direction. So Jason, a quick, like, what do you think is the ideal scenario in 2 years?
Yeah, I think we should dream big. So 4 years ago, people thought the idea that anyone would want NFTs of JPEGs they could see for free was nuts. Now we've got a many $million-dollar market that's growing every day, right? So when you get all these smart and creative and technical people together that dream big, crazy things can happen. So why do carbon neutral? Why not? Well, we should actually go beyond that and actually give an example to other industries of how we could go from being potentially bad for the environment to actually positive, right? So every time you buy an NFT, you get not just enough to offset the NFT you bought, but additional, right, to actually turn NFTs into something that green the world. And I'm not so sure that that's actually that complicated, right? Like, I think we can get there as a community if we decide that that's what we want to do.
And we're using those NFTs to actually help solve the climate crisis by organizing people to connect opportunities to reduce emissions to the capital and demand to make that happen.
Awesome.
Here. I think we're out of time, but I completely agree with the other two speakers.
Thank you so much, guys.